Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast presented by Under Armour. I am your host, Joe Kuzma. I am seconded by Brian Roach. What's up, Brian?
I made a suggestion offline to you as to how we should start this podcast. Do you remember that?
Oh, man. You know what? No, it's been a blur today.
It just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. That's how I am. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah, your 80s movie references, you are an old guy, older than me. Some of these things fly over my head. It just is when I'm dealing with the young whippersnappers like Eric or Zach over on the site. You yourself have dated references just like they call me an old man too, which really hurts since I'm only in my mid-30s here, but
and yet you do it to me.
Oh, you killed the segue though, man. It hurts to hear that you're old and you might be past the times when you're only in your mid-30s, let alone late 30s, like 39-year-old James Harrison. Yes, folks, we want to talk about the Browns. But since there isn't so much to talk about with them, and this is the hot topic of discussion, we're going to start this out with some more airing of grievances. It's an extended Festivus week here at Steel City Underground because I never realized that in the wake of so much shade, there could be so much heat. And I do mean all the shade and all the heat being thrown by so many of what are now James Harrison's former teammates. And when we last convened, the news hadn't yet broke that Harrison was signing with the New England Patriots for a hot dog and a bag of peanuts, as it appears. I don't know that this has anything to do with pride. Maybe pride on his part, just being spiteful. I don't know where his pride actually is, to where he thinks he may play, he may fit into their system, or any other number of things. I just don't, out of all 31 other teams besides the Pittsburgh Steelers, I cannot see why James Harrison would join the New England Patriots.
Well, there's two reasons. The first is if the stories that are coming out are even have a shred of truth, and Harrison saw the writing on the wall early in the season and asked for his release early on, and the Steelers, being the Steelers and making smart moves, said no. And Harrison couldn't handle, essentially being relegated to that veteran backup role who wasn't going to get a lot of time, whose job was really to do the Steelers way kind of things and mentor the young guys. If he couldn't adjust to that, well, that kind of probably did bite into his pride to a certain extent. And the reason that you then go and sign with the Patriots is to give a happy, let's just take the F off of WTF, you,
yeah,
to both Mike Tomlin, to the Steelers themselves, because, and to try and chase a ring. Let's not pretend that Harrison doesn't think that if he can't get a ring with the Steelers, because the Steelers have finally allowed him to embrace his heart's desire and leave because he thinks he's going to play somewhere. If he can't get a ring with the Steelers, he wants that ring because he probably just, that's a prideful thing. I want to go out on top. But it will be my take on this will be pretty straightforward. The first time James Harrison is on the field for the Patriots and a offensive unit on the other side adjusts, runs a running back at him to try and pull him off into coverage, and Harrison can't cover him, that'll be the last time James Harrison is on the field for the Patriots. Because who knows how much he is or isn't going to play. I think it's an interest. I mean, it makes sense. They need pass rushers, but you got to assume when they see him on the field, they know he's not going to drop into coverage. He's coming after the pass, and you can slide and adjust coverages on the line to compensate for that. which was our problem.
Well, Christina, or as we affectionately call her, Tina Rivers, wrote something that was, and you did as well, both good pieces. Yours was more or less the ugly fallout of this Harrison thing. Hers was, this really isn't a whole lot to worry about. This isn't like Bill Belichick's getting some former Olympian that he can make into a Pro Bowl player within a week, no less, or 2 weeks with a bye. And all of a sudden, how does he fit into a 4-3? Is he really taking a playbook over there as well? Like, what is there for the Patriots to gain? Most assume some inside knowledge of the Steelers' internal workings, of which they, Aditi Kikawala pointed out that they changed their calls at halftime anyways. They use a revolving number system. It's no different than a coach who covers his mouth with the play sheet so it's not on film. I don't know how much James Harrison offers in that regard to scheming. It's not like the Patriots have had that big of a problem with the Steelers in the past anyway, and it's not like they get an offensive playbook where it's going to help their defense either. It's just, the whole thing to me is bizarre, and there are people out there that are defending Harrison. Now, first, when we talked about this, we said it takes two to tango. I said, just wait until we hear the other side of the story. Now that we're hearing the other sides of this story, Bud Dupree and even Marquise Pouncey, I mean, he's not known. I don't know Pouncey to be a guy that comes out there and says the type of things that we heard him say. And Mike Mitchell, Vince Williams, and did you see these guys on Twitter all changing their names? They put a B in front of their names on Twitter to Mike Mitchell and Vince Williams, and they're doing it all to taunt and whatnot, and say you're dead to us, Harrison. I feel you, Steelers Nation. I don't know how I feel about this. Some people are like, well, the way Troy Polamalu was pushed out of town. Troy didn't go and sign with the Patriots. He didn't try and go and sign with the Ravens. Rod Woodson had to change positions. He was done as a corner. I think if the Steelers needed as a safety, and he would have accepted whatever dollar value and everything like that, in transition to that, maybe he would have remained a Steeler for all of his career. There are guys like Franco Harris who played with other teams. I hear people on the radio talking about Jerry Rice and Joe Montana and even Peyton Manning. Montana went over to the Chiefs. I know Jerry Rice had a few good years left in him with the Raiders. And Peyton Manning, of course, going into the Broncos and playing in 2 Super Bowls and winning one of those and going out on top. Listen, folks, this isn't the same thing. James Harrison had already left the Steelers, was already done as far as the Steelers were concerned, went to the Bengals and was signing papers to retire as a Steeler when he was brought out of retirement and got the sunset like a Peyton Manning or a Joe Montana or a Jerry Rice or any other examples that you can find that have that second wind and still show that they could play even though you're on the back 9 of your career. I don't think there's anything beyond this. There's not a 19th hole, to use a golf analogy. I think Harrison's played all 18 already. He's 39 years old. For him to say, this is the other thing that bothers me with this. For initially when I heard this, and I just ignored it because I get sick of drama, and this is a lot of drama just fueled by the Colin Cowards of the world that need hits and clicks and everything like that. And we're probably doing no better than the same here, but just trying to make light of it and make sense of it, okay? I'm not just trying to whine about James Harrison. I don't care about him, really. I don't. When he got cut, I was like, yeah, big deal. It was probably something he did. It was something mutual, and here the mutual is that he thinks for some reason he's still going to play somewhere, somehow at 39 years of age. Nobody wanted him 3-4 years ago. I don't think they want an older version. You don't go out and buy the old car. You go out and buy the new car because it's shinier, it's nicer, it doesn't have as much wear and tear. It could probably go faster for less miles per gallon. That's just the way these type of things work. But it bothers me that James Harrison said what he said about if I knew the way things were going to go, I wouldn't have re-signed with the team. Oh, a 2-year contract, mind you, that he probably wouldn't have played the second year of, as we've alluded to many times on this show. You hope to get half of that contract. And that was probably just an extra little incentive, little bit of payment, security, or whatever for James and his family to be ungrateful. Everybody's saying, oh, he's doing this for his family. $59,000 is the ballpark there because it's 1 week. These guys get paid 16 game checks. They get paid for each game. They don't get paid, really they don't get paid for the offseason or anything. Everything's just divvied up for their contract over the course of those regular season games. So The postseason, they're getting paid even less than that. It's something like, I don't know, I have to look up the pay scale, like maybe $30,000. That might be the divisional. That might not even be the wild card or whatever. It's chump change. It's not their regular contract. So he's not doing it for money. He's going to have to move or find a place to live up in the New England, in that area, Boston or whatever. Is he going to uproot his family and everything like that? Get out of town for one game check and maybe a couple that are in the postseason. Like you said, it's probably more Super Bowl motivated. So I don't know. What did he think? He strung everybody along the previous year as to whether or not he would come back. I thought to myself the previous year, hey, you're stringing everybody along, but do they really want you back? That's the other hand. You're older, and he was part of a rotation. He got to play quite a bit as the season progressed. You got into December football. They got Bud Dupree back. This is all the 2016 season now I'm talking about. So he immediately makes his decision. He wants a return for this season, but how do you think that was necessarily going to go with a healthy Bud Dupree and knowing that the team needs to find somebody else for when he's done, his playing days are done? He's not going to play till he's 50. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, let's be realistic. When James Harrison is signing that contract, nobody, including the Steelers, is anticipating that when they draft TJ Watt, he's going to come out of the gate ready to go. That's not the traditional path of a rookie with the Steelers, and it's really not the traditional path with a rookie in a lot of places. You know, the expectation has always been, I think, that Harrison was there to play and allow a rookie to grow behind him. The problem was TJ was good, and he was good from the get-go. He surpassed expectations, and he could do things that James Harrison simply cannot do anymore. And when you combine what TJ can do with how Cam Hayward is playing, how Stephon Tuitt is playing, with the transition from trying to go through zone blitzing and playing so much zone coverage to trying to mix in man coverage and requiring your linebackers to drop back, all of those things easily explain why James Harrison wasn't getting snaps. The problem is nobody knew that when he signed that contract, including James Harrison. So it's not that if he had known, he wouldn't have signed. The Steelers didn't know that either. They had a plan at that time, but as in all things, plans are fluid and they change. And based on how the draft went, based on how mini camps went, based on how, training camp went, that plan evolved. And James Harrison, unfortunately, found himself on the short side of that stick. Remember, this is a guy who retired already once, 2 years ago, because the Bengals didn't know how to use him. And the only reason he even came back was because of injuries. In that instance, I think it was to Jarvis Jones. And remember, that's who he's replacing last year. He's taking Jarvis Jones' snaps, and TJ Watt ain't Jarvis Jones. Or I should say, Jarvis Jones ain't TJ Watt. It's a different dynamic now. And the problem is, and I said this in the article that I wrote, I met Debo several times, and I will always have a kind place in my heart for James Harrison. He will always be Uncle James to me, but that's because, that's just my interpretation of things. I'm going to remember the touchdown in the Super Bowl. I'm going to remember slamming the Browns fan. I'm going to remember some of the other things that are Steelers related. I'm not going to try and focus on this, but James Harrison has a different side to him than just he's just a big bear, but he's cuddly. No, he's really not always that way. He is sometimes he's an ass. So, knowing that and having seen it firsthand, I'm not surprised. Look, he's also a guy who has some pride, and you'd have to. And you think about the career path of Harrison getting cut many times, working for everything he's got. He wants to go out with a boom. He wants to go out on his terms. Well, it just didn't work out that way. And he's not. I don't know. Obviously, he's not like my best bud or anything, but you'd have to insinuate from the commentary of people, like you said, Marquise Pouncey, Bud Dupree, Mike Mitchell. These are his brothers in the locker room. And, they probably wouldn't have said a thing except for Debo comes out basically saying, yeah, they made me leave. When really what he should have just said is, I wanted out. I've been wanting out all year. They finally let me out, and now I'm glad. In which case, probably none of this ugliness even occurs.
Yeah, he threw them under the bus, and they had no choice but to respond to that unless they wanted to be the ones with egg on their face. And they knew that wasn't the case. There was the story. I mean, Bud Dupree literally said, good luck with the playbook thing because he never attended meetings. Or there were reports of him fake sleeping through meetings while Joey Porter was talking and things of that nature. And maybe he could get away with that as a veteran. Maybe some of that's joking and blown out of proportion. And he played with Porter. So, they're probably a lot closer than somebody like TJ that would just come in and, it's Coach Porter to him instead of Joey, first name basis or something to that effect. So, but I mean, it doesn't even burn me so bad when he went to the Bengals. It was one of those things where he didn't want to take a pay cut. He didn't think his time was over. He had the back injuries and that, and he wasn't quite the same player that he had been in years prior. And the Steelers were ready to move on, and nobody else really gave him much of an opportunity. And then months later, he ends up, the Bengals end up, signing him to a contract. He plays a year there and then done. And then he comes back home and you don't feel so bad about it. This one kind of burns because it's right in the thick. It's right after a controversial loss to the New England Patriots. It's after all the things with Shea Leave and doing it for Dan Rooney. And there's just a lot of things going on in this mix that make it more bizarre and harder and a tougher pill to swallow as you're entering the postseason. You know that you may have to see this guy on the other side of the field and Foxborough if that's the way that it turns out and the Steelers and Patriots play one another in a path that would make both of them, if they end up on the same path and face each other, will be the AFC Championship game for all the marbles to see who goes to the Super Bowl. And considering how that's gone for Pittsburgh in years past, you don't necessarily want to help the New England Patriots. We were already yelling about Cleveland, the guy that they what was it, Dorsey or whatever, the new GM, and he immediately gets rid of Kenny Britt, and guess who's already playing snaps up there? It's like, why do people do things to help this team? And New England's pretty cutthroat themselves. They will drop a guy. They will pick up guys. They will do whatever they need to do in order to win, and that includes allegations of cheating, the various allegations of cheating and whatnot as well. But yeah, it stings a lot more that Harrison goes to the New England Patriots in this example. And you're exactly right, Brian. You're saying no one expected TJ Watt to be like this. Well, no, you didn't. A lot of people were thinking the Steelers, we're talking about the Browns coming up here. There's two guys they took in the first round that many people had pegged for the Steelers. Jabril Peppers, the safety, who has not had the greatest season at all, whether that be playing as a safety or playing special teams. He has not been the best. David Njoku as a tight end who's had trouble getting on the field and being a starter, and some of that's quarterback play and things we could talk about, or maybe we won't need to talk about. We could just say Deshawn Kaiser's not that good. And he's a 52nd pick too, so he wasn't very far, taken very long after TJ Watt. So you almost feel like, man, how did so many people overlook that Watt had all of these skills, was so athletic, and just, they talk about this stuff in training camp. They build guys up, and you're thinking to yourself, there's no way, he has that name. Okay, we get it. Yeah, he probably looks pretty good. I mean, he played like a year or two of defense in college. No way this guy can be like this, and he's just it's just a natural, and nobody expected that. And face it, they weren't expecting some other things to happen. They chose LaMarr Woodley to give the largest contract to any defender back then, and that's what forced their hand. They had a lot of high-dollar contracts, a lot of aging veterans, where they had to let go of James Harrison the first time around. They expected Jason Worlds to fill in that gap as well, and Worlds ends up, were we going to, transition tag? Now, are you going to franchise tag him? Are you getting a long-term deal? No, he retires completely. And then the other guy, we've already referenced, Jarvis Jones, was drafted in the first round to be one of those heir apparents, and all three of those outside linebackers, by one way or another, did not manage to be a long-term solution in the future of the Steelers' plans. And then you have Bud Dupree also getting hurt there. So there was a need for James Harrison, and he came in and he was still able to go. But for how long can you go? Like I said, he already got the sunset to his career. He became the all-time franchise sacks leader. And, that's always a tough one with sacks because they were only tracked since 82. But still, you got to respect that in one way or another. That's it, man. I don't know what else other than helping, being a good teammate, passing on some of the knowledge. We had Carlos, I don't know if that was you and I, it might have been me and Ron back then. It was Carlos Emmons was talking about this. What was that? It was when Joey Porter was coming up, and I forgot who was on the other side with Emmons. And it was the same kind of scenario of there was a lot of talent, and you were always fighting for your roster spot. And he understood it was a business. He understood it was a dog-eat-dog world. Obviously, he went on to have some success beyond the Steelers as well. But traditionally, the Pittsburgh Steelers know when to cut ties with someone when it's past their time. We don't like to admit it, but sorry, Hines Ward, Troy Polamalu, guys like that, Brett Kiesel, it was their time. And they just, you gracefully sometimes bow out. Sometimes it's a little controversial because a guy might still have time left on his contract, or the team may want to go in a different direction from a player. And that's where the business of football comes into play. Apparently, James Harrison was not interested in being part of the team and seeing, as you said, his role transition from that on the field to helping the guys who are on the field.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of talk that happened after the initial cut about the team being harsh, the team being selfish, the team, not doing right by a legacy kind of a guy. And the team was quite content to take that heat. But I think that what we have seen transpire is that is not how this really rolled out. And I think you and I even talked about this, saying that it wouldn't surprise all of us if a conversation occurred between Tomlin and James Harrison, and James Harrison said, look, you're not going to play me, let me go. And Tomlin said, okay. But, the idea that, the Steelers did him wrong clearly, I think, has evaporated at this point. So, Debo didn't want to do what was in front of him. And, we've all had that moment in our lives where we get emotional, we get upset about something, and we make a decision that we later regret. I think this will be that for him. People are talking about, oh, this ruins his legacy. This means he won't get in the Hall of Honor. If he gets in the Hall of Fame, then he'll go in as a Patriot. Are you out of your gourd?
It's a bitter pill to swallow, thinking about he could come back and retire as a Steeler, though, after having done this. In due time, though, all wounds usually heal.
Yeah, remember how long somebody just retired as a Steeler, and I don't even remember who it was. It might have been Plexico. It might have been somebody else. That it took them a long time to finally do it. And it won't surprise. Look, it's not going to be. This is going to be one of those things that has to, fade to a certain extent. And James may not see it that way. It's possible that even if he doesn't get a ring, nobody picks him up for next season. He decides he wants to retire a Steeler, and he contacts the Steelers, and they go, yeah, we're not really interested in doing that right now. But then again, the Steelers tend to take the high road on everything. It wouldn't surprise me if they said, sure, why not? From a fan standpoint, yes, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough pill to swallow. I'll tell you what will make it easier. Winning number 7, and nobody's going to care.
I think so. And I think that may be a good transition to just move on and maybe talk about the next opponent, of which maybe James Harrison would have got to play this week if he would have just kept his mouth shut. Because there may be some guys sitting. We talked about this a little briefly on the last show, and we were talking about, they're going to be looking at the scoreboard. The Patriots and Jets are playing at the same time. There's even rumors that Bryce Petty might make way for Christian Hackenberg, which just all accounts of Hackenberg hitting media people on the sideline with passes during training camp doesn't make that for a very promising prospect of the Jets upsetting New England, going up to Foxborough, no less. So looking at the scoreboard, it might be Landry Jones' time. I know some internally, some are talking about Josh Dobbs maybe getting some reps too. I'm like, I don't know how you split that up if Ben plays too. Maybe Dobbs gets in for the last 6 minutes like Landry Jones did against the Texans. Maybe Landry gets 2 quarters or something. I guess it all depends on what's going on. If you're looking at the scoreboard and it's 6-3 Patriots over the Jets with under 2 minutes left in the first half, you're looking at that and probably thinking, unless you have a 30-point lead, there's no way we could put Ben and Bell and Bryant and all these other guys on the bench. That's a lot of B's.
Yeah. There was just Joe Rutter is reporting that Marcus Gilbert has already said that the Steelers are not going to play Roethlisberger or Bell or Cam in this game. And the injury report today, Ben is on it again, so he hasn't practiced for 2 days. Bell is on it again, and Pouncey is on it again. So that's 3 guys who are starters who haven't practiced this week. It really looks like they're going to sit these guys, which makes it the Landry Jones show. And then maybe the question is, do they keep the starters on the roster? Keep them active for game day.
Exactly.
Don't deactivate them, and then watch that scoreboard. And if all of a sudden the Jets are up big and we need to win this game, well, okay then. But I don't know what kind of message that sends to Landry if we go, look, we got to win, you're out.
You know what, though? I think Landry's enough of a team player. I mean, I'm tired about what this guy's gone through in his career. He gets booed when he gets hurt leaving the field. And that was against Cleveland as well. But he's also he beat the Browns last year. I think if you're Mike Tomlin, and I think Sean McVay, the Rams coach, had said something because he was catching some heat because I think he's sitting a whole bunch of people too, like Todd Gurley and whatnot, this upcoming Sunday. And he said, look, it's more important that our guys are healthy to play in the postseason as opposed to winning a game when the game doesn't really, this seed, that seed, whatever, doesn't really matter to me. And I think Tomlin's thinking in his head, okay, let's look at this for a second. Let's look at this. It doesn't even have to be on paper because sometimes the statistics tell it all. Hugh Jackson, in his second year with the Cleveland Browns, is 1-30. That's 1 victory and 30 losses, and they only won that 1 game because the San Diego field goal kicker couldn't make a field goal. He's .032 is his win percentage. Tomlin is thinking about last year's game where they made some critical errors and RG3 ran up and down the field, and they still came back and won that in overtime. I think if you're Mike Tomlin, you're thinking your prospects of winning, win or loss probably isn't all that important, but you're thinking to yourself, I don't need to bring out my full arsenal of weapons, and we could still compete with the Browns and possibly just win this game. I know the people in Cleveland will probably celebrate. I think they may celebrate more and have that parade they're planning for the perfect season if they go 0-16. I can tell you the Cleveland fans themselves don't feel too great about even beating the Steelers' backups, but they have enough hate in their hearts from being miserable and fans of that mistake on the lake that they will celebrate and enjoy a victory no matter how they can get it, hook or by crook. And I don't want to see that because it just makes me throw up in my mouth, and I don't like throwing up in my mouth.
No, that's gross. And I need to point something else out now because Marcus Gilbert has just tweeted out that Marcus Gilbert absolutely did not say that.
Yeah. But, I mean, they were limited in practice for Thursday. Like, Ben was he didn't practice Wednesday. Cody Sensabaugh was full. Foster was full, though he's dealing with I don't know that he's been cleared for concussion yet. Maybe by the time all you guys hear this, since we're recording in advance of Friday's practice. Antonio Brown obviously is still injured. So the Thursday was Ben's limited, and Bell and Cam all show up limited as well. Yep. And maybe that's a veteran privilege type thing. Maybe that's, hey, we're going to start working these other guys in and get them some reps. So this is exactly what the question was, who's inactive? Antonio Brown's inactive for sure because he's hurt. So there's one. There's 7 inactives on game day?
Yes.
So you need 6 other guys, and you could easily make a case for somebody like Dan McCullers to not be there. You can make a case maybe Ramon Foster's not completely out of the concussion thing, or they want to hold him another week. Maybe he's out, or one of the other offensive linemen like Matt Filer. And then where do you go from there? Usually it's the third quarterback that doesn't get a hat. I don't know that you have three quarterbacks active for this game. I think that's tough because if you have an injury at another position, it's gonna make you short. It's gonna make you weak no matter how you factor in, well, we're gonna play backups, we're gonna do this, gonna do that. It's not the preseason where you have everybody available that's on the roster. So you got to figure out who these guys are that aren't going to be out there. I think Hawkins was inactive on the last game because, of course, they got Gilbert back and then Hubbard kicked back to his normal position. So we may have 3 or 4 there, and 3 of them look like maybe potentially linemen. I think you got to work I don't think you could sit any of the receivers. So usually they have an extra receiver, but AB's not healthy, so AB takes that spot. You're going to have all the running backs. Maybe Dan McCullers, like I said, maybe one of the defensive linemen, maybe J.J. Wilcox, who was inactive recently. So you got to figure out who the 7 are and how they work Dobbs in. If they give one of the veterans or just give Ben the day off, then Dobbs maybe gets his first helmet of the year. But it's interesting trying to guess and make guesswork of all of this. I could tell you one thing, though, Brian. The Cleveland Browns are not a good football team. Their defense may be marginally better than what we saw with the Houston Texans. They're 19th against the run. They're 19th against 7th against the run and 19th against the pass. But as far as their offense, they're 26th overall. They're dead bottom in the league with takeaways, minus 28. Most of that from Kaiser. They've given up the 30th most points, and they've scored the least points of any team in the NFL this year. The only thing that looks good on paper for them, let's see, 0-8 at home, 0-7 away. They're 3-12 against the spread. The spread is 11 points. Steelers are the favorites. The over-under is only 38, I surmise, because they feel that the Steelers will rest their starters.
I think it's hard to find something to be afraid of with the Browns. If you want to be worried about anything, it's probably their run defense. It's 7th in the league is nothing to sneeze at. It's a legitimate run defense. They have a legitimate front four, and this will be our first glimpse, I think, of Myles Garrett, who didn't play in the first time around because he was injured. And I think he will be ready and play. I think he's been playing, so I think he's going to play this week. And that's a legitimate guy for, our offensive line to have to deal with. It won't surprise me if Ben is the backup to Landry this week again, and Dobbs doesn't get a hat. I think you're absolutely right. The only reason Dobbs does get a hat is if Ben is inactive. Otherwise, you can't keep all 3 quarterbacks active. So my anticipation is it will be a situation similar to when Ben set the record for the most passing by a backup quarterback, that Landry will start the game, and if he gets hurt, Ben will come in. I think they have the talent to win the game with their second team, players, so to speak, because as you said, it's still a limited number. You're not going to be able to sit everybody on the offensive line because you don't have 10 offensive linemen. You're not going to be able to sit everybody on the defensive line because you don't have enough. You just don't. The roster isn't big enough for all those people to fit on it. So, I think you've got a shot where Martavis is likely to still get snaps. Eli and Juju will probably still get snaps. So you've got a decent receiving core there. Justin Hunter may play more. Vance McDonald may still get snaps. Jesse will get snaps. You still got a lot of starters or starter-capable people who are going to play in this game. The primary difference will be who's throwing them the ball and probably who's running, because I would assume Bell will see a similar type situation and yield to Stephen Ridley as the starter, or get very limited snaps, if any at all.
My 5 to watch included Landry Jones and Stephen Ridley for those various reasons. But you jumped over my guy, Darius Hayward-Bay, who had a huge game against these guys last year in the same scenario. And I think being a veteran and whatnot, we haven't seen him a whole lot. We did see him against the Patriots, and he came up short inbounds, unfortunately. But it usually looks like when Darius Hayward-Bay comes out, it's going to be a run play. And he's a big special teams guy. I think he could see a little bit more action. Remember, DeMarcus Ayers was with this team last year, and he basically played AB's role the entire game.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. They didn't have Bryant then. Bryant could still get the same amount of playing time share, and you could see maybe the rest of it with Hunter and DHB maybe splitting. Another wide receiver to keep an eye on, that was part of my 5 to watch, was Josh Gordon. He hasn't been around for a minute or 2 or 3 or 4. Only guy I know that's had more problems than any of the guys that we know on the Steelers roster that have been suspended. I know you don't know this off the top of your head. I had to research it, and I have it in front of me, so it's a bit unfair, but I'm going to let you guess. When's the last time the Steelers have seen Josh Gordon?
3 years ago.
Let's see. So that would be 2014?
Yes, that's what I'm going to say.
December 29th, 2013 is the last
I was only
time.
a year off. That's not that bad.
No, not too bad. He was suspended for 2015. He was suspended for part of 2014. They didn't see him there. That means for the people in this secondary, and most of the guys on the team, for that matter, don't know who Josh Gordon is. Artie Burns and Sean Davis weren't even drafted yet. Mike Mitchell signed with the Steelers in 2014. This is Mike Hilton's first year with the Steelers as well. William Gay's the only guy that was around. And, of course, Joe Hayden knows them because they were former teammates. So it's going to be maybe a little bit of a test. It depends if Deshawn Kaiser could get him the ball, and I don't see Deshawn Kaiser doing that. I should pull up his completion percentage, but I want to mention my other the fifth guy to watch is just Duke Johnson, because Duke has more than once now thrown up a 5 and a closed fist for the O for a 5-0 50 in honor of Ryan Shazier. Very classy by Duke Johnson. If he happens to score in Heinz Field and does that, he won't get booed, I don't think, unless there's a few ignorant drunk fans there. He may even get applause, and he may fall over backwards because it's more people than he would get applause from in Cleveland.
Absolutely. I think, there is such respect and appreciation, I guess, across the league for Shazier and the situation that if that's what he decides to do, and that's been what they have been doing, I think the fans will applaud him. Even though it's a Brown, and maybe unless it's a game-winning touchdown.
yeah, and then in that event, he does that. I wonder if Shazier will be there again as well. But in the event that happens, I don't think people. You know what? It's very fickle. It was a weird crowd last year because there were people who sold their tickets. It's going to be cold, so there's going to be fair weather fans. They're not going to pack in 68,000 or whatever they got for the Heinz Field record against the Patriots. It's going to be a very strange crowd. There's going to be a lot of first-timers there. They're going to be able to go to a game for first time ever because it's going to be a little more affordable. All the tickets are under face value from what I've seen so far. And, it'll still be a decent crowd, but it's going to be a different crowd. And, they didn't have the savvy and smart crowd that is, in a lot of these cities like Pittsburgh or Philadelphia or even Boston sports fans. They're sophisticated enough to have realistic expectations when you have Landry Jones and Stephen Ridley instead of Ben Roethlisberger and Le'Veon Bell, among a few other things. Even if it is an 0-15 team, is still realize it is a roster stacked with professional football players, young players who may not want to lose every single game for the season. They may be desperate to pull out all the stops, and if you see that, I don't know that there's necessarily boo birds, so to speak, unless they really stink up the joint. But if they give it a good go, even with the backups, I think most people will be satisfied in knowing they have a week off and get to come back and then play the real game. Yeah,
it's like I said, it's a hard game to determine exactly what to worry about. There's so many ifs and whats, and we don't know. We assume starters are going to not play, but if they play, then we have less to worry about. And I think it's just going to be. I don't know. I want to say it's going to be one of those games that's going to be like every other game where we're worrying about it to the very end, but for different reasons this time, because maybe the starters aren't playing. It'll be interesting nonetheless. I'm curious to see what the stands are like, how many people end up being there for what is almost certainly a meaningless game in the sense of seeding, because it's just so unlikely that the Jets are going to pull off the miracle upset against the Patriots, even though in 2015 the 12-3 Patriots lost to a 5-10 division rival, and it cost them the number 1 seed.
Yes, very true. I'll tell you, I'll be in the stands, and the only debate in my head right now is whether or not I break my superstition of wearing the away jersey and I break out the Landry Jones jersey because he may play. I might have to break out the road white to wear at Heinz. Very unusual for me, but I'm thinking that Landry's going to have like 115, 118 quarterback rating in this game, and I got to support my guy. I got to put on the number 3. I got to don it like the Superman cape, take the torch, and carry it because no one else is supporting the GOAT like I am this Sunday.
That is true. There is no doubt about that.
Hey, Landry, like I said, he's going to put up that 115 QB rating. Then he's going to go out and get trashed for New Year's Eve, find a nice woman that might get drunk enough to not care about a little bit of peach fuzz on his face, and get a nice New Year's Eve kiss. So, go ahead. I was going to wish you a Happy New Year and sign off, but you're not going to let me do that yet.
What was his rating last year?
That's a great question. He threw a pick or two. Here, you fill the air with something as I go to look for.
So, because I'm going to tell you that my guess is it was in the 80s or 70s.
It's
we'll
possible.
See.
It is possible. He did throw a pick. It wasn't. It wasn't a great one. That's the one that DHB came back and knocked out,
and knocked away.
For the touchback. Here we go. Browns and Steelers. No date on this. Jeez, it was New Year's Day, I think.
Something like that.
It's always around that all the time. Landry Jones had a 103.1, buddy.
Oh my gosh.
24 or 37, 277 yards, 3 touchdowns and a pick. Woo!
Well, there you go. So you could be dead on. As we like to joke about it. Look, if I'm you and I'm there, and I know Landry's going to play, you got to be wearing the jersey, man.
I got to do it. I got to support.
You just got to do it.
I got to support my brother from another mother. So,
yeah.
Well, Brian, this will be the last game of 2017, and sadly enough, Week 17 means the regular season is over now. We look forward to this, and it just blew by in the blink of an eye, and now we get to look forward to, the old man out and the baby coming in for the New Year's deal, and what 2018 has to promise us, but it's still a continuation of the 2017 season. So 2018 means good things for the Steelers and postseason and whatnot. We'll see how this shakes out, and we'll see everybody in 2018. So Happy New Year to you, my friend, and Happy New Year to all of our listeners. As always, be safe, especially, if you're having the adult beverages for New Year's Eve. Like I was saying, Landry might get out of control if he has another big game. Be good. He could get out of control as well. You just never know. May not be able to contain himself. And we will catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.